Which is better, the Moto E 2020 or the Moto E6? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. Hi everyone, this is Kevin here, coming at you with my comparison between the Moto E 2020 and the Moto E6. The Moto E6 was launched about a year ago and has been a very popular phone, making its way over to a variety of different carriers and being offered factory unlocked. And the Moto E 2020 is a brand new device, and it is the successor to the Moto E6. Now, the Moto E 2020 is also known as the Moto E7. That phone is going to be launched for international markets. This phone is replacing this phone. And you can probably tell already that we've gotten quite a few innovations here with the new Moto E. Now, at the moment, you can get the Moto E 2020 factory unlocked for $149.99, and you can get the Moto E6 factory unlocked for $99. So a $50 difference between these two phones. Now, another cool thing is that both devices are available factory unlocked for all major US carriers. So whether you're using Verizon, AT&T, Mint Mobile, T-Mobile, whatever you're using, you're going to have very good unlocked compatibility with both devices. Now, the Moto E 2020 features a large 6.2-inch display compared to the Moto E6, which features a smaller display at 5.45 inches. So you can see, holding the two displays up next to each other, without a doubt, the new Moto E has a much larger display. Another difference too, of course, is the design. Now, with the Moto E 2020, we have a water drop notch at the top. We also have very rounded corners, compared to the Moto E6, where of course there is no notch, and the corners do have a little bit of roundness on the sides, but overall they're pretty square in comparison to the Moto E 2020. Now, I'm personally not a huge fan of how curved the corners are, but on the other hand, I appreciate how much larger the display is on the phone. So certainly if I had to pick one over the other, based on how the display is, I would go with the Moto E 2020. Now, both displays are IPS LCD, they're both 720p as well, but with the Moto E 2020, we're getting a 19:9 aspect ratio compared to an 18:9 aspect ratio with the Moto E6. So you are getting a little bit of a more narrow, taller form factor with the Moto E 2020. As far as the width goes, the Moto E 2020 is a little bit wider, but not significantly wider. Another difference too is that the top bezel is certainly a lot larger with the Moto E6. And at the bottom, the Moto E6 has a larger bezel as well, but we do have a little bit of a thicker bottom bezel on Moto E 2020 too. As far as the display brightness goes, it does seem like the Moto E6 is a little bit brighter, and I do have the brightness at 100% right now on both phones. But at the same time, the Moto E 2020 certainly looks nice and bright and crisp and clear. So I think both phones, especially for their price tags, do have very good looking displays. Now up top, both devices feature 5 megapixel front-facing cameras. Now internally, we're getting 32 gigabytes of storage with the Moto E 2020 compared to 16 gigabytes with the Moto E6. So you are getting twice the amount of internal storage with the new Moto E. Now, both devices do feature microSD card expansion, which is awesome, but still, I really appreciate that we are getting twice the amount of internal storage with this device. Now, there's no wireless charging with either of these two phones, as you'd imagine, and with the Moto E6, there is no fingerprint sensor, but we do get one with the Moto E 2020. So that's another nice addition there, certainly a very good upgrade to see. So it's a nice, responsive, fast fingerprint sensor. There is no face unlock with either of these two phones, which is a bit disappointing, but it is nice at least that with the new Moto E we do have that fingerprint sensor, because with the Moto E6, if you do want to implement security with the device, you are limited to just using a PIN code with the phone, and that can certainly get very tiring over a long period of time. So the fingerprint sensor is certainly the way to go. Also, on the back of the two phones, there's some very big differences regarding the cameras. So with the Moto E 2020, we're getting a dual camera setup with a 13 megapixel main camera and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So you are getting portrait mode with the rear camera. And with the Moto E6, we just have one 13 megapixel camera on the back. You do actually technically get portrait mode with both phones, despite the Moto E6 just having one camera, but without a doubt, you're gonna get better portrait mode results with the new Moto E. Internally, both phones feature 2 gigabytes of RAM, but with the Moto E 2020, we're getting the Qualcomm Snapdragon 632 compared to the Qualcomm Snapdragon 435 with the Moto E6. And that's a huge difference between these two processors. I'm really happy to see that Motorola seems to be moving away from the 400 series from Qualcomm because they're really not that great of processors. Now I did run benchmark tests on both phones here, and I'll show you the scores. I already had the app loaded up here in the Moto E6, that's why I loaded faster. But you can see that with the Moto E 2020, I got an overall score of 119,123. And with the Moto E6, I got a score of 71285. So that's a very significant increase from this phone to this phone. In fact, I'm very surprised that Motorola gave us this much of a speed increase from one phone to the next. I mean, this is just one generation of an upgrade. So good job, Motorola. Thank you so much for doing that. Because we all deserve the best performance we can get for the money. Now, video recording with both phones maxes out at 1080p. With the Moto E 2020, we are getting a 3,550 milliamp hour internal battery. And with the Moto E6, we're actually getting a removable battery. So the back of this phone does come off. That's how you access the SIM card slot in the microSD card, but that battery is just 3,000 milliamp hours. Now, I personally really do like having phones with removable batteries, so it is a bit unfortunate that we don't get that with the Moto E 2020, but at least the battery is a bit bigger. Now, as far as the software goes, you're going to be getting a very similar experience with both phones. The biggest difference though is that the Moto E 2020 features Android 10 and the Moto E6 features Android 9 Pie. Now it is possible that in the future the Moto E6 might get an upgrade to Android 10, but it really doesn't make a big difference in my opinion. You're getting a very similar experience, and both phones feature a near stock variant of Android. Now this particular variant of the Moto E6 is the Metro by T-Mobile version of the phone. So it did come with some Metro by T-Mobile apps pre-installed. But the good news though is that Motorola hasn't added a bunch of extra garbage to the actual operating system itself with either device. So you are getting very quick, nice and snappy performance with both phones. Now there is no NFC with either of these two devices. So if you do want NFC, then you are going to have to go with something else. But those are the main specifications for both phones. Definitely some nice upgrades with the new Moto E. It's hard to believe that from one generation we went from this to this, but I certainly can't complain. Now taking a closer look at the hardware here, we'll take a look at the left side of the two phones. So with the Moto E 2020, we have the slot for the microSD card and SIM card, and then with the Moto E6, we have nothing. Then on the right side, both phones have the power button and volume button. Then on the top, both devices have the noise canceling microphone and 3.5mm headphone jack. Then on the bottom, with both phones, we're getting a micro USB port for charging and data transfer. So I do wish that the new Moto E had USB-C, but it does unfortunately have micro USB. So both phones have that same exact port. Both phones also have the microphone on the bottom, and then we have the speaker. Then on the back of the two devices, with the Moto E 2020, we have the camera module, the flash, and the fingerprint sensor. But beyond that, it's a pretty minimalist setup here in the back. I think it looks good. I like how it's kind of reflective and glossy, but on the other hand, it does pick up a lot of fingerprints. Whereas the Moto E6 features a matte finish here on the back. All we have is the camera module and flash and Motorola logo, but you can see here that there are no fingerprints anywhere on the back of the device. Let's now do a speed test comparison between these two phones. So I did clear out the recent apps on both devices, so that's really cool. Another thing I wanted to mention as well. So there is the gesture navigation here with the Moto E 2020, and you certainly don't have to have that. You can get these same buttons that the Moto E6 has on the bottom if you want to, but I personally prefer the gestures. But let's now pull up the camera. So 1, 2, 3, go. Looks like definitely a lot quicker there with the Moto E 2020. Let's go to Google Chrome. 1, 2, 3, go. And definitely a lot faster with the Moto E 2020 as well. Let's go to yahoo.com. 1, 2, 3, go. And Yahoo loaded up quicker with the Moto E 2020. Let's go to engadget.com. 1, 2, 3, go. and also quicker to load here with the Moto E 2020. So you can probably tell at this point that the Moto E 2020 certainly is the faster device of the two. You can also see here in this side-by-side how much more content fits into the frame with the Moto E 2020 as well. Now, of course, that's due to the display being larger, but you can see though in this example, not only can you see this article, but you can see a decent chunk of the image from the next article. But with the Moto E6, you can really just see the one article. So that's one of the advantages of having 19:9 compared to 18:9, but also one of the advantages of having a larger display in general. So scrolling is nice and smooth there with the Moto E 2020. Pretty smooth as well with the Moto E6. I mean, even though the benchmark score with the Moto E6 isn't the highest ever, I'm still decently pleased with the performance of the device. It's not like it's a complete piece of junk, that's for sure. I think it performs decent, and if you can snag a good deal on it, then it might be worth it. But let's go to this article right here. 1, 2, 3, go. And again, way faster with the Moto E 2020. We'll also do some pinch to zoom. Pretty smooth on both phones, so that's good. So in general, there's really no way to argue against the fact that the Moto E 2020 is the faster of the two phones. So in conclusion, which phone is the better choice? Well, obviously, the Moto E 2020 is better in every single way. I can't really think of a way that it's not better, unless you absolutely don't like having a notch at the top of the phone. Even the footprint of the Moto E6 isn't much smaller, despite having a way smaller display. And that's mostly because of how much larger the bezels are. So the only situation where I'd say to go for the Moto E6 compared to the Moto E 2020 is if they're offering the Moto E6 at a really good deal. I know that a lot of carriers will offer this phone for free, for example. So if you can snag it for free, then it is worth it. But if you are gonna buy this factory unlocked for $99, then maybe consider going for the newer model instead and paying the extra $50. But if you absolutely must save $50, I get it, I understand, then I think if you go for the Moto E6, you're still gonna like it. It's not like it's a terrible phone or anything. It's just that the next generation model here certainly is quite a bit better. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions at all, let me know in the comment section below. This is the Motorola Moto E 2020, and this is the Motorola Moto E6. Hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one.